Hey, I'm Daniel Berger, and this is Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. Welcome to the podcast where Metro New York real estate meets great stories and a douse of humor. Forget the dry sales talk. Here we dive into the fun and unexpected moments of real estate. Join me each week as we explore Westchester, Long Island, the Bronx, and more. You'll hear about the people, the places, and the crazy situations that make this industry so interesting. Thanks to our sponsor, Remax Prestige Properties, we're ready to share the lighter side of real estate. Whether you're a pro, a buyer, or just curious, we've got something for everyone. Ready for today's adventure? Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. This week, we have a very cool guest. We have our youngest guest, actually, at the time, Bailey Herman. So Bailey Herman has been intertwined with me on a few different things, and the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker is something that she's really taking it to the next level. And I just want to introduce to you. So she's currently a college senior at Washington University in St. Louis. But I don't know if that's her spell. I think the biggest thing about what Bailey Herman's doing is she's actually the writer of a book that we're co-writing together, The Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. And I really wanted to bring Bailey Herman on so that we can discuss the process of writing her first book, hopefully not her last book. And just talking a little bit about, what it's like to, being a real estate broker. So with that, I'd like to welcome Bailey Herman.
Wow, thank you so much. That was a great intro. Yeah, no, writing the book has been awesome. I feel like we've been having a good time doing it. Yeah, just
So
first time
so
writing
it's
a book.
so it's funny. So hey, I hope that was I don't know if that was a good introduction. I mean, I feel it wasn't up to muster because one of the hobbies that you really enjoy is music, and I know that you DJ a show, probably one of the most popular radio shows at KWER, uh, at Washington University's radio station. And as you know, I've listened in. I think you've so I guess with full disclosure, we'd say, how do I know Bailey? So I went to Washington University. Bailey goes to Washington University, but I've kind of met her because so happens she actually is dating my son. So
Right. And that's how the
that
cookie crumbled.
so that's how the cookie crumbles. That's how we met. Bailey's actually from Maryland, and has been dating my son, and so we've going on a trip together, or whatever, and that's actually something we'll talk about. One of the adventures that we had on our
Oh,
trip, which
yes.
I'll lead into that, but don't really want to discuss that just yet. But
Okay.
um, but I know that you're very much into music, very much into DJ. So this is like a podcast of us talking, but that's what you do each week, where you basically, I think it's at a half hour or an hour show.
It's an hour. Yeah. I get to exercise my radio personality on your podcast.
Exactly. So you basically have a show that you're trying to put together, and you'll interview people, you'll talk about little bits. So that's something that's interesting. So what got you? Obviously people are into music, but you're more into music that you actually wanted to be a DJ. So what are some of the things that you do being a DJ, and what are you trying to get out of that hour, the Bailey Herman hour?
Yeah, the Bailey Herman Hour. It's got a title, my show. It's called Untitled. Kind of edgy.
That is the title.
Right? Yeah, it came from a lack of inspiration and then inspiration struck. So anyway, no, it's great. Basically I like bring a friend on most weeks. Sometimes your son Zach comes on if he's free/willing. Yeah, it's great. I like get to look for new music every week, which is like it forces me into exploring more stuff that I wouldn't normally find. Because there are a bunch of limits on how many streams an artist can have for you to play it, or if the song's like in the top, Billboard 100, I'm not allowed to play it. So there's like they call them mainstream laws. So that kind of helps me explore, which like I get to find stuff that I wouldn't have normally found, which is exciting. And also like it's just an hour to hang out with my friends and like laugh and have fun. And
Right.
someone gave me, I don't know who allowed me to have a radio platform with, just my buddies that listen in, but it's fun. I'm not complaining.
Well, so that's interesting that you might want to explain as to how come you can't. You're a big Taylor, you're a Swiftie, obviously.
Oh, I
You've
am.
exactly, but like you can never play her music, and so explain a little bit about you know you know uh at the radio station at WashU is it's kind of it's not public access, but the way that they have it and what the FCC I think it's the FCC what they
Yeah.
allow you to do.
Yeah. I think, well, so we're not, I think they're transitioning to like giving DJs the option to stream on broadband, but I was just abroad, so I'm not sure if that was implemented while I was away, but I've never done it yet. Um, but basically KWER was created to like introduce the St. Louis greater community to music, a station that's not just playing top 40 hits. So like to kind of maintain that integrity of what KWER was meant to be, we have to follow these like regulations to kind of keep true to what their original intention was, which I like. It's annoying sometimes when I like want to play a Taylor Swift song because that's my girl. Um, but no, I get it. I get it. And it keeps me like looking for new stuff, which I appreciate.
Well, I think that's isn't part of the reason also is that the radio station doesn't have to pay royalties for anything, and in order to do that, it's more is about like trying to get new musicians out there, in a less of a commercial environment, I guess.
Yeah, totally. 100%. I think it's
And
cool.
I guess for you, it's kind of cool being in St. Louis because from a music perspective, right? It's edgy and St. Louis does, like BB King, I think was either was from there or he certainly is
Yeah,
very vibrant in that scene, his music, but a lot of different types of jazz, and other types of music actually have filtered through St. Louis over the years.
that's true. St. Louis Blues.
St. Louis
There you
Blues.
go. So there
Yeah,
you go.
exactly. We love that. That's a great hockey team. So it's like, the Islanders are my best. You're probably a Capital fan. Um,
Yeah,
but
my brother definitely is.
yeah, but after that, then we then migrate to the St. Louis teams as well.
Right, there
So
you go. There
so
you
that
go.
that
Go
that's cool. And that
Cardinals.
go Cardinals. Another thing I know that you're very involved in is there's a creation of a magazine called Strike Magazine that's
Yes.
relatively new, and I know that you've basically started as a freshman and have done every role in the magazine, which I guess now that you're a senior, I guess that hopefully means that you're now the editor in chief or at least a co-editor in chief of the magazine.
Yeah, it's super exciting. It's called Strike Magazine. There's a bunch of different like student-run publications like throughout the country at different schools. It started at um Strike Gainesville and at UF was the first one. But yeah, it started at WashU the year before I came to campus, and then I've always like been into art and media and writing and fashion, so it's kind of something that I sunk my teeth into right away at WashU, and it was pretty small once I started, so I kind of started off with multiple roles, and so kind of seeing the very early part of the club, I've seen how almost everything works. So like that's what I was saying. I've nearly every role I feel like I have done. I've done photography, I've done, you know, creative design of different, shoots and spreads that we've done. I've done writing, I've done, styling, and then as the assistant editor in chief, I was kind of doing, overseeing everything. So this semester with my friend Elena, we're starting as co-editor in chiefs, which is really exciting. And
Well,
I'm, yeah,
congratulations. You know
thank
what?
you.
I'm a big fan of doing everything. And as you see, as we're,
Yeah.
you and I are really at storytelling, right? So not that, I kind of laugh because it's, the adventures of a real estate broker. It's just the things that are happening to me. And while I don't proclaim them to be like amazing things, but they're kind of interesting. But
Totally.
I do every job too, right? Like I don't really have an admin to do my paperwork, and I don't, I want to be involved in it. I want to know what's going on. I do the
Right.
showings. I talk to, so it's I think that's how you really learn the most about what's going on and become more of an expert.
Yeah.
Um, and do less things, but do less things really well is probably more what how I want to do it. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's good with, with you, doing fashion and culture magazine and the DJ and things that might be outside your comfort zone, but things that interest you and
Yeah.
and just doing those things, like um I'm a member of the Golf Writers of America and I'm very involved. I'm on the board of directors. So
Uh-huh.
not things that I've done, not things for that pay my, but it's more like a hobby that I've been
Hmm.
interested in. And so, helping a friend of mine being who's a local sportcaster, I've been in locker rooms of the Yankees, the Mets for World Series, for All-Star games, for golf and football. And it's kind of like people are like, oh, you're so lucky. And I'm like, it's not really luck because I've put myself out there and I volunteer my time and those are all about experiences, right? Learning things
Yeah.
um and all that. So I guess I'm lucky that with you being on, a fashion culture icon at WashU, and yet you
Oh.
still are working with me where I'm not that, right? Like it's a little shocking that I could hurt your street cred.
No, it's you know what? It's not hurting my street cred, first of all. And second of all, I'm learning so much about real estate. And it's like you've kind of done every job in that also. Like in our first chapter, we give your prologue, your career prologue, where we talk about like every odd job that you've done to get to, being a real estate owner slash broker with a podcast and a book. Like you've done a little bit of everything too.
Ultimately it's all about we're just normal people just going about our day doing business, but interesting things come up. And sometimes they're interesting, funny, and sometimes they're interesting, sad, right? And
True.
so, um, as we go about it, how do we tell this story?
Mhm.
We're trying to do it in the best way possible that, we're never trying to make fun of people. We're just trying to, explain things that as they happen and kind of have like more of a humanistic touch to it. And and what's interesting is when I said I've always joked that I want to have this book written, and the podcast is based off of that a little bit of there's interesting adventures that have happened along the way, and so why not do a podcast where I can bring people in from that. But it's that, and also just interesting things that have happened. So what was my family is always like, who's going to read your book? Like legit, and I'm like, give me a break. We're going to put something together. We're trying to have it. A light read, kind of like, oh my God, that's interesting or whatever, but not,
Exactly.
we're not writing Moby Dick and, and War and
Right.
Peace. This is just a coffee table book that was like, oh, that's interesting type of thing, right?
Exactly. You know what? We're not writing the next great American novel. But the thing is, like you were saying, you have a lot of interesting stories and like some interesting sad, but a lot of interesting like, man, this guy's like kind of seeing a lot of wacky stuff in this job, and it's just kind of fun to share it, I feel like.
I mean, some of the things, some of the things that you've been working about is it's interesting. It seems like there's dead men have porn much more than dead women.
You
When you go
know,
through, right? Like none of my stories with women who have passed and go through their house have porn. That's just a true statement. Um, multiple
that's true.
houses that have guns in them, right? So we're working on
Right.
guns.
Right.
Um, what else do we have? We have skulls,
We
right? We had two
skulls.
skulls in a house.
Yeah, that's a good sneak peek
Um, Having to go to cemeteries with shovels to dig for footstones to
in
see
the pouring
who might
rain.
be buried in Grant's tomb.
Right. Who's married in Grant's tomb? You're trying to
Exactly.
find out. You're
I
trying to
had
find
to find. I needed the deets, so I definitely did that. But so when we're talking about the book, the family's like, yeah, 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 you're not going to write the book, and I'm like, I'm not writing the book because, as my family always says, nobody would understand anything that you say. So I do appreciate that. So to let people know, what we generally do is we'll either get on a Zoom or a phone call. You
out.
record the call. I speak in what my family calls Danny speak, about a specific topic. And then you
You know
try
what?
to
I've
put that.
cracked the code of Danny speak. I can
Yes,
understand.
right. So that was the whole point of how do we work together where you take Danny speak and put it into something that actually makes sense so a normal person can read it and go, I understand what they're trying to say. But you almost weren't able to write the book. So we were in Montana on a family vacation. You came out with my son. We had a great time. You and I think the family went skiing that day. You and I aren't really skiers. And so we're like, what are we going to do? Right.
Saved our
So
own adventure.
we knew there was this dog sledding opportunity. You and I both love animals, both love dogs,
Love
and we're
dogs.
like, let's do this dog sledding thing. And my family keeps saying that I traumatized you such that we're lucky you're still dating my son, and we're lucky that you're still talking to me. So can you explain a little bit about what dog sledding was and what it, because again, and I tell my family, I go, no, Bailey's over it. They're like, she's not. She's just being polite.
No.
So maybe here you can kind of state your case.
Okay, so am I traumatized by the dog sledding itself? Not really. I honestly, here's the thing. I was not coerced into the dog sledding. Honestly, full disclosure, I was intrigued. I wanted to see the dogs. I wanted to see what dog sledding in Montana would be like. I was like, you know what? This sounds like an adventure. What was traumatizing, and honestly, I might need you to fill in some of the blanks in this story here because I, at certain points I was like, I don't know what's going on. I just kind of tuned out. But our I guess you would call him the driver of the dog sled, um, really took a liking to Danny here, and kind of told his life story in a way that we were kind of questioning how much our ideologies and philosophies on life, you could say, aligned. And we did fear for our life a little bit, to expose our own beliefs. So we kind of just sat there. You did a great job of de-escalating the situation. You validated his feelings. Um, but yeah, do you remember exactly what he was saying?
I mean, so the basis of we started where there are all these dogs that are like all the dogs want to go on the sled because it's an activity for them, and they're all like tied up like outside on like tree things, but not in a bad way. They're just hanging out, and they're picking what dogs are going to go on the sled. I think it was like 8 dogs or something, and my
Yeah.
family still can't get over that. Like it's you and me on a sled with blankets and things like that. But like you're basically in my lap, right? And so right away, my family couldn't get over. They're like, okay, so right away, Bailey's like, she's traumatized for this, and she's never talking to. And it wasn't like we knew what it was, right?
We didn't know.
I mean, you're in my lap. I'm like,
I'm like, all
it
right, guess
is
we're rolling with it.
right. Like it is what it is. So again, that's how it started. They put the dogs up, and I guess our driver basically, I think, was a war veteran who probably was suffering from PTSD. I mean,
Yes.
this is what he's telling us.
Right.
He's probably um he probably is politically is more on the right. You're more on the left. I'm probably more in the center. Um, but again, when you're young, you probably should be more on the left is generally the belief because
Well,
you move more to the right. But whatever. But we definitely had different opinions about different things. But and he was probably in a way that scary in the sense that he still had his own demons. And so he
oh
talks
yes.
about his demons. We're talking about the state of America or the state of the world. And obviously, he has a more global perspective. I think he
Right.
was in Afghanistan. Um, Obviously, has been through a lot of shit, and to protect our country. So I think it's an interesting case is that it is, and it does have a lot to do with real estate. It is somebody that was so different from us, right?
Mhm.
Um, but by listening to him and validating what he says and trying to get nuggets of what he said, and then talk about how he's right in those things, and maybe bring up views of things that are a little bit different that are more what you felt or what I felt. Um, I think that dialogue is something that probably doesn't happen that much right now in our country, right? Everyone goes to their corners and they don't want to talk to anyone. And what's crazy is that we were basically thrust upon this dog sled with blankets on, where you're on like cliffs and whatever. So like if he wanted, and he has his PTSD, if he wanted to throw us off the ledge, we would be
Our
going,
lives
and
were in his hands.
that would have been, that would have, and this was pre before us having a book, so I don't even know what the article in the magazine would have been like, you know, father and girlfriend's son's girlfriend die on cliff with
Oh
crazy
my
man,
God.
right? So it would have been something like that, but we just kind of talked, and obviously, he was like working. It was interesting because we talked about social media. He doesn't really do it, but he does a lot of reading. He
Yeah.
basically lives in like a cabin with
Mhm.
only electricity. I don't even think he had phone access or whatever. He was trying to live a simpler life to,
Right.
to get his head straight. And he loved the dogs. So that was like, right, that was our
Right.
commonality, was like being out. We loved being outside. It was snowing. We were, and we were just together. And so
Right.
um, I think that's a really good example of trying new things, because if we didn't do this dog sled thing, we wouldn't have had that experience. Again, the people that criticized me and from forcing you to do it were the people that weren't with us. Um,
Right. Right.
and then here's an example of really a person who's a good person who thinks differently than we do, which is nothing wrong with thinking differently. Ultimately, it's how do you work together with people and find commonality, which I think
Yeah.
is something that's really lacking. In our culture right now, in our especially political culture.
Yeah, and you know what, that like that philosophy that you have, not everyone shares that, but that's been coming up a lot in the book so far. Like almost at the end of every chapter, it turns into, okay, how am I dealing with a situation that's either different than how I would have dealt with it myself, or this client and I disagree on X, Y, and Z, but it's like, how are you willing to find the common ground and like help them at the end of the day instead of dismissing them for being different. So I think that that's like
Right.
uh something that like kind of we're driving with the book, which I think is kind of a good positive message
Well,
going on.
right. Like I was joking. I think you and I, in one of our
Mhm.
talks, I talked about psychology, and you know, I'm really just a real estate person, right? A real estate broker. But there is a lot of psychology um, that's involved in really listening. It's really listening to people, validating people, and trying to get people, trying to understand and be understood, and not being condemning or judgmental. So I have to assume that that would be a good trait in a lot of different, jobs. But, certainly, um, you know, I, I, generally, if you can get people that are good people, right? So a
Mhm.
person that's good people can have different views, and so, of course, you come across people that are not good people. Sure, that it certainly happens. But I do think my success in real estate has probably been, trying to work with different people. And I also then try to make it where um, I enjoy work. Like I love my job because I get to work with all different types of people. And so, if I didn't like people, then it would probably be like, oh my God, this person's calling me, this person, as opposed to, you pick up the phone and you're like, how can I help you, type of thing.
Totally.
So that's really the deal. But it was interesting. So I think we probably talked about it. That was 2 Marches ago in Montana, where we said something about the book. And I know that you're an English, or I don't know if that's your major, but you're at least a minor of English,
Yeah.
right?
English creative writing. So
Right. So it's like,
nice gig for
so
me.
we always talked, and I probably joked at that point, "Oh, you can write my book," and ha ha, everyone's laughing, and and then the summer rolls around, and people are trying to get different internships, and I think one or two of the internships that you were looking at didn't happen, um, and I
Yeah.
think
Oh, it was a tough go.
and I believe you probably contacted me or texted me. I don't know if Zach did it, and basically was like, "Well, is that offer still available?" Um, And I know that people were saying, "Oh, you can ghostwrite." I go, "Ghostwrite? I'm not letting you ghostwrite." I go, "If Bailey Herman's name's not on my book, then you can't do it because I want you to write it like we're, and we are doing it together, obviously, either
Of
as
course.
told to or what have you. But you know, um, I'm like, you know what? This would be you certainly have written things but not books and whatever, and so
Yeah.
I think I helped send a couple of I have somebody that one of my friends has written a couple of books and he's been an editor, so I spoke to him and I think I sent you a book or two to say, oh, here's here are things I might be able to help you with, whether
Uh-huh.
this or in the future. And we worked out a plan on of compensation and all that, and that made sense. So in essence, I feel good that I saved your summer in a sense, right? Like where you have like a legit off like job now because you're basically writing your first book. You're getting paid to write a first book, right?
Yeah.
And as you know, we're very flexible in time. It's not 9 to 5, and I don't care where you are, and you know, and we do it at sometimes really late at night and whatever, but
That's
we're
true.
and so writing a book is really more me telling you the story of the vignette.
Yep.
You write it up and then I read it and then I'm like, oh, we got it. This isn't exactly, you're like, might have been what I said, but this is not exactly factual, so let's get it factual. And then
Uh-huh.
oh, it would be better like this, and then we work on edits. And I mean, how many chapters have we put together so far?
We have 6 so far.
And do you have
Um,
any idea how many words that is?
about 20,000
Okay, so
around.
we're a third of the way,
Third of the way through. Yeah.
a third of the way through.
Yeah.
Um, and so I know that you're, about to start your senior year, and I'm like, well, we got to get this thing done before you graduate. So
Oh, yeah. I'm invested in this project. Don't you worry.
exactly. So, but to me, it's been great. It's been great, being like a little bit of a storyteller, trying
Yeah.
to make sense of it. And you're like, yeah, I don't know about that, or that's really good, or how do we go in depth more about that? And
Uh-huh.
then and just even the process from you as a writer, you're definitely taking whatever I'm saying because I share it with some people, some of
Mhm.
my colleagues, some of my family, and they read it and they're like, oh, that's really good. And they're like, I don't even understand how Bailey even understood what you were trying to say there, but I understand what she wrote. So
Good. Well, you know what? I we've done it enough times of going back and forth and telling me the story that I've got a system and a method to pick through the audio, and I can understand what you're saying, and we we just go from there.
so yeah, so I do appreciate it, but it's kind of good because again, you will always have a book that whether no one's going to be like, oh my God, The Adventure of a Real Estate Broker. Wow, that's like classic. It's not
You
going to
don't
be.
know.
Let's assume, but that's
Not
it's
with
better
that
this.
attitude.
Well, I'm certainly trying to give you the best stories that I have, and committing. Like it was so much easier saying I want to write a book than it is actually doing the book because
Yeah.
yeah, it's easy. Oh, that's a fun story. I want to write about it, as opposed to like really putting in the time and sitting down and getting our schedules aligned and then going
Right.
over it. And then you're like, and then I'll reread what you did, and I'm like texting like at 2 a.m. in the morning of like, okay, on page 3, paragraph 2, we should say this.
Yeah,
So
it's awesome.
um
Then I get to wake up and make the edits.
right, I'm not just trying to just be like, here, you do it. My name's on it, your name's on it, so we're both trying to make it look at least tolerable to people. But so
Yeah.
far, when I share it with people, they're intrigued and they like it. And people are like, when are
Okay,
you going to
good.
do my chapter? And I'm like, okay, we're a third of the way through. I still have
My God.
66% more to go. Um, but certainly, trying to have it, just kind of interesting. And I know that we talked about maybe putting pictures in the book, which would be interesting because obviously, as what I do after I sell a house, there's always, pictures of clients. If I'm a listing
Right.
agent, I generally just show the house, but some of the houses that we talk about, with the skull porn
Yeah,
guns. We might want a picture of inside, which at least the good news with that is I don't need anyone's permission because there's no people in it.
right.
Um,
That
but you
skull is
know
dead. He doesn't need to approve.
that the skull was dead for 100, was severed from the head for 100 years, so it was
Yeah.
not a crime
Read
scene.
about that
So
in the book. Don't give it away. Read about
ex
that in the chapter.
exactly, or the quote that we say that Joan Jett loves rock and roll and sushi.
And
So
sushi.
that's in the book. That's definitely in the book too.
That's in the book. If you
And
want to know more about Joan Jett's love for sushi, you're gonna have to
a
crack.
little,
You're gonna have to crack the cover.
we Joan Jett gets a mention. John McEnroe, Tatum O'Neal get a mention.
You know a
Um,
lot of celebrities,
you
low
know,
key.
low key on that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's also helping one of my clients inject herself with Ozempic for her first
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
That makes it in the book. So
Yup.
there's a lot of interesting stories along the way. So so it's certainly interesting. So what
Yeah.
have you found about being a writer, and an English major, what are, and also as the editor of Strike Magazine, what do you find different about writing this book, or how do how do you go about taking a story and then trying to make it all make sense?
Well, it's really interesting because I've done my own writing projects just throughout life and particularly in college. And like some of it is, fiction and through a character, but a lot of it, like my at Wash U in the creative writing part of the English major, you need to pick a genre to concentrate on. So mine that I focused on that I'm finishing up in the spring is creative nonfiction. So that's kind of a little bit of what I'm doing with you is kind of exercising a combination of okay, like I kind of need to put myself in your brain, like you in a sense are the character that I'm speaking from your voice. So that's been kind of a fun creative thing, but also I have kind of a lot of practice just in like personal essay or like memoir type of classes of telling a story that actually happened and making it, intriguing to somebody that it didn't happen to and making sure all the details are not just coming straight out of my head how I remember it, but like in a way that provides context for people that wouldn't understand. Um, so I don't know, I just like feel like the project that we're doing together is something unique that I haven't done before, but like I feel ready to do it. And like I keep finding myself reflecting on other projects that I've done or other classes that I've had that I'm like, oh, this is finally coming in handy, which I think
Right.
is really awesome. Yeah.
No, I think it's good. I think that's why I was serious when I brought it up, and while, selfishly, I guess I'm glad that you didn't get those other jobs, and maybe you're happy too, because maybe those
Hey, me
jobs
too, honestly.
would have made you go to an office, and this does not make you go to an office, and
Right.
you have the flat, each of us were like, oh, can I bump this to this time? Can I move this to this? And of course, the answer is always yes, because
Right.
we'll find the time to get it done. Yeah, so it's once we're done and we have something that's published, then we have something that's published. And
Yeah.
so I was speaking to one of my one of my Dave, who writes a bunch of books, and we're talking about how are we going to publish it. And so he's giving me some ideas that you go to this company, it's kind of, you publish on demand, kind of like, so when someone orders a book, that's when they actually make the book.
Interesting.
And eventually it will be on Amazon, and all that other stuff, and we'll see. I can't imagine it's all, certainly I'm going to get it for my clients, and my clients might want to read it. But again,
Yeah.
you know what? It is something out there. It's going to be a light thing out there, and it's really just bringing, of the 8 or so years that I've been doing this, anecdotally stories of things that we think make sense, or at least that there's a little bit of a story to tell. So
And you know what? The truth is, you truly have accumulated some pretty remarkable stories that would fit nicely in a book. So it's not like you're writing about boring,
you
here's a
know,
house I live
and it was funny because I had a closing yesterday where I'm like, okay. I've actually already got permission from the person to write it.
Oh, nice.
And it was like as it was happening, I'm like, I mean, it's a client that I've yesterday was the third time I've done a transaction. I helped them buy a place,
Okay.
sell a place, and then buy a new place. And this one's a little sad in the sense that she has two children. She and her husband went to contract on a house, and you know, they're probably breaking up. And so she basically is buying it as a single mother of two kids. And so how am I going to help her do it? And, and all
Right.
that. And it's so it's not, it's not necessarily a fun story, that part, but she's been great. I've enjoyed working with her for the three different times. And so a lot of it is how do we work together to help make it as good as possible for you. I think she's going to be renting out part of the house. So it's like, how do I then because there was a talk of like, do we just flip it so that she can get out of the house, but she needs a place to live. So how do
Mhm.
we adapt it to her needs? And so how do I help her the best that I can? Um, and and had those tough conversations,
Yeah.
so that's really where we're at with that. But I have other stories, so it's certainly interesting. And so we'll see. We still have 40,000 more words to go,
Keep
which
collecting
is
stories.
a lot,
Yeah.
but we'll get there. And again, we're not specifically on a time pressure, so it's really just when keep doing it, and eventually, I guess hopefully we'll get to 60,000, and hopefully, um, I guess you've done the prologue, but we'll have to do the something to conclude it, right? That says
Yes.
this is concludes of the story and all that, and we'll try to work with that. But
Yeah.
you know, um, I was being having you on and being someone that's in college and what craziness was going on in the world and just trying to be a senior and
Mhm.
what are some of the things that you see going on for yourself as a senior or in the world, like what do you want to do when you grow up?
Um, I would love to be in the book business, honestly. I love writing. I love editing. I like love working with my friends' creative projects and like kind of tapping myself into their vision and seeing how I can help them with that vision. So yeah, so I think I would love to be a part of more book processes, whether that's, my own or publishing others or editing others. Um, yeah, I think that's the goal. So for senior year, I think is, obviously, uh, job applications,
Right.
uh, for after I graduate. But yeah, I'm excited about finishing the book. That's going to be really exciting. I'm excited about the magazine. So I think, uh, just like gonna try to have a very creative year, and just like enjoying being in St. Louis, which I love being around my friends and Wash U and the city itself is awesome. So
Yeah. Well, you definitely, we do have a book to finish, but there's plenty of time to do it. But you definitely should enjoy senior year is a special time where you're probably the most free,
yeah.
generally now than after that with, jobs and commitments and things like that. So you should certainly enjoy, school, the area, maybe take a couple of weekend trips. I know people sometimes like to go to New Orleans or like, Tennessee,
Yeah, yeah.
Nashville or
I might go
Memphis.
visit a friend in New Orleans for Mardi Gras. My friend goes
Y-
to Tulane. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
that's always people do like to do that. So you should certainly do all of that and start your own adventures. So when you write your own memoirs, that you be like, uh,
We'll see. Maybe I'll write
but
a memoir about writing your memoir.
it maybe. So maybe you can maybe one of your classes you're gonna have to write something like that. So anything
Never.
I can do to help.
Okay, I'll let
But
you know.
thanks. So, thanks, Bailey, for coming on. And we appreciate it. And it's interesting to get your take on, some of the stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
And thank you very much. So for that concludes another Adventures of a Real Estate Broker with Daniel Berger. Thank you again, Bailey, for coming on. And people will be able to, stay tuned for our future episodes.
Yes,
Thank you
thank you
very
for having
much.
me. And buy the book when it comes out because it's
Buy the book. Thank you.
gonna be awesome.
Thanks for joining me on the adventures of a real estate broker. I hope you enjoyed our time together as much as I did. If you laughed, learned something, or just had a good time, do yourself a favor and subscribe to the podcast. A big shout out to our sponsor, Remax Prestige Properties, for making this all possible. Remember to leave a review if you enjoyed the show. It helps more people find us. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep exploring the adventures in your neighborhood. I'm Daniel Berger, your New York realtor, and I'll see you in the next episode.